So now the fun part, fellas. We spent the week breaking down the film. We've all watched film of Stanford. We've watched a lot. Some things were like, that's so bad. And some things like, that's actually pretty good. Not too bad. So we've broken down the film. We've looked at the numbers. We've looked at the matchups. And now it is time to make our predictions. So we're going to have some fun with that, guys. You all know the drill. You give your score prediction, and you talk to me about how you see the game playing out. Then I'm going to follow up some questions on game balls. So, Trevor, we're going to start things off with you. First of all, what is your score prediction for this game, and how do you see this game playing out?
Final score prediction that I have is Notre Dame winning 38-10. And I do think that Stanford's final touchdown is going to come later in the game once it has been already very securely put away. I think that Notre Dame finally starts to open up the passing game a little bit. And that's not me saying that it's going to be completely solved after one game against a really bad Stanford defense. But to what we alluded to earlier in the show, I think Notre Dame is going to start implementing things, and we're going to start seeing things out of this passing game between pass protection, receivers, quarterback combined that we were starting to expect to see or wanting to see earlier in the season. I think that is going to help open up the run game. Riley Leonard is, like Brian, you and I talked about before, he's going to become more of a complement to the rushing attack for Notre Dame, not the focal point. And I think we're going to start to see what this offense was meant to be a couple weeks ago.
So, Trevor, if the game plays out the way that you think it's going to play out, who gets your game balls for the offense?
Game ball for the offense for me is going to go to Riley Leonard. Because I think he finally has his first complete game as a passer. We've mentioned it before, and he has one game against Purdue where he's hitting the layups. He has the game against Miami of Ohio where he's taking deep shots down the field. And if it weren't for a handful of DPIs, they would have been pretty accurate balls as well. I think we finally are going to see a complete game from Riley Leonard, and I would give him my game ball.
I sure hope so. That would be very much needed. How about the defense, Trevor? So you said the 38-10. They score late. Okay, so Notre Dame as a whole on defense is going to play well. Who do you have as being the best of the best? Who are you giving your defensive game ball to?
Defensive game ball for me is going to go to, and I haven't really decided yet, but it's going to be one of the interior defensive linemen. I think they're going to build off of their performance against Louisville, which was on paper their best performance so far of the season. And I think they're really going to start, they're going to blow the doors open as to why they decided to come back to Notre Dame. They're going to do a good job getting pressure on the interior, on Ashton Daniels. I could see a sack or two coming from one of the two veterans on the interior. So I haven't decided which one it's going to be yet. Just for the sake of saying I'm going to give somebody a game ball, I would say it goes to Howard Cross.
I'm okay with that. I mean, I think that's fair. It's like, look, I know what position's going to dominate. I'm just not sure which guy. I can accept that. I'll allow it. I'll allow it, Trevor.
Appreciate it.
All right. What's the one thing you're most concerned about in this matchup, which is going to keep this game from being what you think it's going to be?
The offensive commitment to opening up their scheme overall. We talked about it a lot this show. I don't want Notre Dame from a running standpoint to just say, you know what, we're just going to run into the teeth of the defense and wait on 4 or 24 to bust one open. I don't want it to be that. Pass protection is going to be another one. Is if you are going to commit to the offensive line that you had against Louisville and they come out and are still performing essentially the same and there's no improvement, those are the two big things that I see being the main contributing factor to Notre Dame not putting up 38 offensive points.
Yeah, the offensive line is so important. I have an article at irishbreakdown.com, by the way, for where I talk about, like, look, it was more so big picture second half of the year as opposed to just Stanford specifically. But if this offense is going to take off, it has to start there. It's not the only issue. There are other things that have to get addressed, but they can't be fixed and addressed if that part of the team doesn't play well. So that's a big one. So, Mr. Roberts, let's turn to you. Give me your score prediction and how you see this game playing out.
I have the Irish winning 34-13 in this football game against Stanford. I believe that Notre Dame actually is going to come out. Trevor, we see this very similarly. I think that Notre Dame is going to come out and actually come out throwing the football a little bit and create a couple big plays. I think that is going to be in the first couple of drives of the game. And Notre Dame is going to get up pretty big in this one. I could see them being up 28-7 or something in that ballpark. But my hesitation to making this a 40-something to 10 or 50-something to 10 is that I just think that Notre Dame is going to get up and they're just going to kind of sit on the football a little bit, right? And they're going to kind of move it a little bit more at a slower pace. And I just think that they're going to play a little bit more of that methodical feel. I think that we've kind of seen that outside of the Purdue game. Like that's just kind of what Notre Dame does, as far as like they just get into these lulls where they're okay. Let's play defense. Let's control the ball. Let's run the clock. We're good here. And I think that for me, but defensively, I think that 13 points is going to be even a little bit more skewed because I do think that they have the chance to have a dominant performance. I do think that Stanford can move the ball at times against Notre Dame, but I think that we are going to see a turnover too. I think that we're going to see a team that can capitalize on that momentum. So 34-13, it's a more dominant performance than what that final score says because I think that Notre Dame comes out hot and they just kind of sit on the football and they play defense and they get to the end of the game is kind of how I'm looking at this football game.
I only have one thing to add to that, Ryan.
Yep.
I just have felt like in his 2 years so far, now going into his third year, that when Marcus Freeman has a game that is personal for him for some reason or another, he tends to not take his foot off the gas. Like, I don't know, a few weeks ago when they played a team that he fired him when he was the defensive coordinator, he put his third string quarterback in the game and they're still throwing bombs. You know what I mean? And I kind of view Stanford as that way for Notre Dame, especially since Stanford's on the schedule next year. There's no need to kind of respect the rivalry anymore. I have a feeling that if they come out of this game, if they come out like you said, I think Mike Denbrock wants this as well. Like we need a game where offensively we put pedal to the metal and really put this team away. And see now if they do what you say, I'll be disappointed as far as just like, let's call off the dog. Hey, no, calling off the dogs for me as a coach is you put your backups in. Doesn't mean you change the way you call plays. You put Steve Angeli in the game, let him run the offense the way you normally would do it. You want to put Kenny Minchie in the game, let him run the offense the way you would normally do it, just like they did against Purdue. And I love that. That's how I grew up, respecting the heck out of Bobby Bass's thing. Like these kids practice hard. I'm putting my backup and a quarterback in the game. I need to let them run the offense. I really hope they do that. It would be a little disappointing if they did. I understood why they did it against Louisville. I'd be less understanding of it against Stanford, to be honest with you. Let's talk game balls, Ryan. If Notre Dame wins this game the way that you think they're going to win this game, so you're going 34-13 and it's not really that close. You think it's going to look more convincing than the score is. But if the game plays out the way that you think, who gets your offensive game ball?
Even though I think that there's going to be some explosive plays in the passing game early, I think it's still going to be Jeremiah Love, and I wouldn't be shocked if one of those explosive plays is off a wheel where you are able to put him against one of these linebackers in coverage. Because if you get Bernadette or you get Tristan Sinclair in coverage, I think that I will take Jeremiah Love in that matchup 9 out of 10 times. I was going to say 9 out of 10 to be nice, but I'll take him every time where there's an accurately thrown football, right? So I think that he's going to create a couple big plays. And because those linebackers are good players, but that is where, if we're talking about the athleticism comparison to Notre Dame, that might be one of the biggest glaring issues for them is that those linebackers just can't work against Jeremiah Love in space a ton. So I hope we get Jeremiah Love off tackle. I hope we get Jeremiah Love in the passing game. I'm going with this is a game where we get Jeremiah Love 150 plus all-purpose yards in this game and a couple of touchdowns. Feed the big dog, number 4.
All right. Defense, you think is going to have a pretty good day. Not necessarily an elite day, but a good day. The defense plays the way that you think it will, Ryan. Who's getting your game ball on that side of the ball?
Bryce Young breakout, 2 sacks, couple tackles for loss, and he now gives you a little bit more flexibility with his breakout to maybe RJ Oben could play a little Viper at times if we need him to. Maybe Joshua Burnham could play even more reps at Viper than maybe what they're intending to. So I think that breakout is more me hoping for the future because I think if one of those big ends does break out, especially Bryce Young, then I think that you now have a little bit more flexibility, especially since the Viper position is obviously depleted due to injury a little bit.
I can dig that, Ryan. I like that. I've done a couple wishful thinking predictions this year as well, so I dig that. And if you watch the Louisville game, and I'm saying this not to you, I'm saying this to sort of a setup to the point, he's starting to flash a little bit. And I'm curious if you see it the way that Trevor and I talked about the other day. First couple times he was on the field, he looked lost. He looked like a true freshman to know what he's doing. In Northern Illinois game, little bit against Purdue, where he had some flashy plays, but it was just based on God-given ability. He actually had a couple moves against Louisville. Like there was one, I think he did an outside rush. The guy went outside and he just ripped inside of him and drilled the corner. I go, oh, okay, Bryce Young starting to figure it out. This is going to be good. And then he has a bye week to build on that, Ryan. So, I mean, I know you're saying it's wishful thinking and you hope it's going to happen, but there's evidence that from this most recent game to make you think that this could happen for him coming out of this game.
It's going to happen at some point, because if you've been around Bryce, I remember when I was down in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl last year, Brian, and like I'm watching him after practice where he is clearly one of the more athletic defensive linemen. He flashed all practice after a game while all the other players are doing interviews or walking to the bus and all that type of stuff. He's working near the goalpost and just doing extra pass rush moves and working on his hands, right? Like this kid's a worker. There's no doubt about that. So it's going to happen at some point. I hope it happens this week again, because like again, with Jordan Matelho and Boubacar Traore out now, you need to supplement some reps at Viper somehow. And I think if a guy like a Bryce Young breaks out and takes on a heavy workload at the big end position, then you can now move guys over to Viper a little bit more. And you can kind of do a little bit of double duty, because you're going to need it down the stretch, because I am worried about Viper right now, because not that Junior Tuihalamaka is not a good football player, not that Logan Thomas isn't incredibly talented, but where's the pass rush coming from right now without Boubacar Traore in the football game? So that's wishful thinking for sure, but I think Bryce Young has the temperament and the athleticism, obviously, to have that type of breakout in a game.
Yeah, they're good football players, but there's not a lot of teams that can lose their first two starting defensive ends and just expect to have an elite pass rush from that position. I mean, it's unfair to ask that. If it happens, great, and it speaks volumes about the job that they're doing developing that position, but it's hard to do that. It really is. It really is. So Ryan, when I and Trevor, I'm going to give you mine. I'm actually going 41-13. So, and I actually think Stanford will get a late score. I think it might be a field goal. I could see Stanford kind of punching one in the first half. Maybe getting a big play and then getting a drive where they get a touchdown. Coming out of the break, sometimes defensively you can lose a little bit of your rhythm early on and maybe give a big play. And if that happens for Notre Dame, I think that's probably going to be bad news for Stanford, because I think that's going to kind of wake the defense up and get them to play really hard. But I really think this offense is going to roll in this game, guys. I do. I think we're finally going to see some big plays in the pass game. This is kind of where you were talking, right? It's more wishful thinking. I'm predicting what should happen more so than what will happen, because I have no clue what this offense is going to do. We just don't know. But you just look at it, and some of the things I've heard about how the week of practice has gone the last 2 weeks, and just that. You watch the last two games, guys, and you're just like, man, they are just a play here, or a guy there, a guy there. If this guy just does his protection, Riley wanted that throw, he wanted it, but he couldn't get to it. They're close. They're a lot closer, I think, than maybe we realize and maybe we've discussed. And I think in this game they kind of figure it out and start to show it. 41 points against this Stanford team is not a national title, here we come type of performance, but it's a step in the right direction. I think if they go 50+ against this team, that says, okay, this team is maybe starting to figure it out, because this isn't a very good Stanford defense, but it's a scrappy Stanford defense. And it's a Stanford defense that lacks athleticism, but it's still more athletic than what Purdue's was. And so I think that they'll put up a little bit more of a fight than Purdue did defensively. But if Notre Dame comes out and starts fast, I think everything else kind of falls into place and it's a blowout. My player of the game, I'm actually going to go with I'm going to kind of go your route, Trevor, and I don't have a guy in mind because I don't know who that's going to be, but I think somebody's going to break out in the pass game, whether it's Mitchell Evans or Eli Raridan at tight end, whether it's one of the outside receivers, Bo Collins, Chris Mitchell, KK Smith, Jaden Thomas, whether it's a slot guy, Jaden Greathouse, somebody like that. And Trevor, you and I talked about yesterday. I mean, I know who I would probably get best bet would be Greathouse or Bo Collins, because we've seen it a little bit. I would actually be kind of happy if it wasn't one of them and it was actually a Chris Mitchell or a KK Smith. Maybe they move Jaden Harrison outside, which is what I would do, honestly. At times is put him outside and let him use his speed and some different type of looks. Because we've seen Greathouse make money plays this year. We've seen Bo Collins make money plays this year. We've seen the Z position do almost nothing this season of any type of impact and value. It'd be nice to kind of have that position breakout against a secondary that honestly you should get a breakout performance. And so part of it's like, hey, if you can't break out this game, like we talked about yesterday, Trevor, I don't know when that pass game breakout happens.
Yep.
Defensively, I honestly think this is going to be a game where one of the safeties is going to have a nutty game. You know, a couple picks, a couple tackles for loss, a forced fumble, because if if you guys are correct in your predictions about Bryce Young having a performance and getting Josh Burnham back helps, and, you know, Trevor, you talked about the interior defensive line playing well, there's going to be some balls thrown up for grabs. And whether it's Xavier Watts or you know, Don Schuler, Christian Gray, Benjamin, somebody, and I think more so the safeties, and I would say safeties and nickel would be in that conversation. Somebody's going to have a couple turnovers and have a couple big play opportunities at that position. And I also think the safeties are going to be very important in making the linebackers right when they're wrong. And you guys know what I mean by that. But then also they're going to be a very big key to stopping the run game, especially the support stuff, the alley stuff. So I think the safeties are going to be very important in this game. From stopping the run standpoint, stopping the quarterback in space standpoint, and then I think they're going to get chances to make some big plays in the pass game. So that's why I'm going with the safeties for my players of the game. Ryan, I was going to ask you, I didn't get a chance to ask you this. What's the one thing that you're most concerned about in regard to your prediction not coming true in this game being more competitive than it should be?
Coming out flat. I mean, I think that's been the crux to this team over the last couple of years, right? Is that when they don't play well, you usually know it very early on in the football game. Like usually within the first couple minutes, you're like, uh-oh, or sometimes even before the football game starts, which is even more troubling. But regardless, I think that if they come out flat, there is, especially off of a bye where you're supposed to have a bunch of answers, we're still dealing with 18 to 23-year-old kids, right? We're like, we don't talk about this enough, but like in the NFL, if a team comes out flat, a lot of times teams come back because they are adults, like they are grown men. They have they're a little bit more mature in bouncing back from things. College kids are not the same. Ultimately, they're not. That's why there's so much more. You start out flat and then you get rolled because you just can't mentally come back from that overall, right? So I really am I wouldn't say worried, but I am a little bit I'm going to watch to see what the pulse of this team is coming out. Are they fiery? Are they aggressive? Or are they just kind of meandering out of the bye week with just kind of expecting to win? If that is the latter, then I don't think that Stanford's going to win this football game by any stretch, but like, could they keep it close for a while because Notre Dame just was not ready to play to begin the game? It's always a concern until it's not.
That's where I'm at, Ryan. That's it. It's just Notre Dame comes out not ready to play. And just thinking they're going to roll the ball out in this. Notre Dame has to learn nobody fears you right now. You have not forced anyone to fear you right now. You've got to earn that. And Stanford's not going to be afraid of you. They had a lead on you late in the second quarter last year. They beat you 2 years ago. And this is a better Stanford team than, in my opinion, either one of those two teams. They're not great, but they're better than this. So I agree with you guys. Well, fellas, that's going to do it for this part of the show. Don't go anywhere, everybody. These two guys are going to go somewhere, but I have a feeling they're going to still be watching too, because Bill Bender is going to join from Sporting News is going to join me next. And we're going to be previewing what is going to be a fun weekend of college football. I'm very envious of you two because you're going to be sitting at home at noon watching those games while I'm traveling over to the stadium and getting ready to work and all that kind of good stuff. It's going to be a really fun weekend of games. Unfortunately, the 3:30 window is probably the best window, so there's going to be some really good games going on while Notre Dame is playing as well. So thank you, fellas, for being with me. Appreciate y'all both very much. Hopefully that, the things we talk about, we start to see it and this team comes out of the break rocking and rolling. So Ryan and Trevor, thank y'all both, folks. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. And if you've not done so, check out the message board at boards.oursbreakdown.com. You can find Ryan. You see it right there, guys, at Rise and Draft. And you can find his columns at A to Z Sports. And of course, Trevor, you can find all his stuff at Irish Breakdown. So I've got irishbreakdown.com. And you can see Trevor's work. He has an article breaking down the Notre Dame defense statistically and where it is right now as we head into the second half of the season. So thanks for being with me, fellas. We'll talk to y'all again very soon.